Let it rip. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into 104.3 The Fans Postgame Live. D-Mac, Rachel Beal hanging out with you. James Marilat will join us after he hears from the winning head coach, Nathaniel Hackett. We haven't said that too often. Thanks, everybody, again for hanging out with us as the Broncos beat the Cardinals 24-15. Pat Surtain calls game there at the end with the interception. D-Mac, a win. We don't talk about wins very often here.
Rachel, the key to victory is for me and you not to be together, apparently.
Apparently.
Why bother be at the game? You're at home, I'm at Ball Arena for the Nuggets game. I mean, maybe the less attention we pay to it, the better, Rachel.
Maybe. I'm shocked. I hope you're with me for the full 30 minutes. We see everybody in the comments who's hanging out with us. A glorified preseason game, someone says. Kind of weird feeling. Kind of weird seeing 24 points. Super Bowl or bust. People are having fun with the win. When you get an opportunity to be excited after we've been disappointed so many times this year. I know it's a third-string quarterback. It was the battle of the backups until Colt McCoy got hurt. But a win's still a win, D-Mac, and it's a Sunday evening. I'm here for it. I'm just going to enjoy the moment, enjoy the Sunday, and see what comes next week on Christmas.
Well, the Broncos quickly realized throwing the ball was hazarded to Brett Rippon's health as he was sacked 7 times. And they just said, forget it. We got to stop doing that. And it worked. They ran good for Latavius Murray. The Broncos offense much better as they ran the ball. And they converted turnovers into points, which is absolutely critical. With 3 interceptions today, that was huge. And, it mitigated a dumb interception by Rippon at the goal line and a turnover. And the Broncos defense played really well. Very curious decision by the Cardinals to go for 2, down 15, made absolutely, positively no sense. And I think that's probably what the victims are. They do a lot of dumb things. So I think they've got a lot of storylines similar to the Broncos. But, Rachel, you just can't be so stupid like they were. But it didn't seem to matter. Good for the Broncos for getting a W. And you know what? We were not at the game today for all sorts of dramatic reasons. I saw photos for what was inside, but I didn't get an official count as to how many no-shows were there. Did you?
A little over 18,000 no-shows, so 56,000 in attendance still. And hell, they got a heck of a game to watch for sure. But yeah, I believe Mace sent out a tweet saying that back in 2019, the Chargers game had 19,000, so that was the most in the post-Super Bowl 50 era.
Wow. So they did officially announce 18,000 no-shows.
They did.
Holy cow. Well, I mean, listen, good for the fans that went. And I'm not mad at fans that didn't go. Heck, we didn't go, Rachel. So, I get it. It just was. And that first half was, brutal. That was awful on so many levels. And you trail 6-3. But again, they were able to turn turnovers into points. Justin Simmons with a couple, and Surtain got one there late. And, you survived, horrific offensive line play because you couldn't throw the ball. You just couldn't. It was just way too risky. When they did throw it, they targeted Jerry Jeudy, which was the right thing to do. And they did enough. The Cardinals, though, Rachel, it's a bad offense. I can't say they're a terrible defense. They're just not a great defense. J.J. Watt had an amazing game, but to, just be fair. What's up, Kyle Berry? What's up, bro? My guy, Kyle Berry. To be fair, he was going against, who was he going? Backups left and right as Miners went out, and so did Dalton Reisner. So listen, man, we shall take it. The Broncos get their 4th win of the game, and that's a good thing.
4th win of the season. That's what's really sad. I am seeing some people in the comments saying that the broadcast did say that it was sold out. The Bronco games are always sold out. They sell all the tickets, but that doesn't mean that people are actually in attendance at the game. So I want to clear that up for people that kept hearing, oh, it's a sold out Empower Field. Technically, yes, it's sold out, but that doesn't mean that many people have actually walked into Empower Field by any means.
Yeah, they walk into every season with every game being sold out. There's a waiting list for season tickets. Yes. So, yeah, I noticed that too. Yeah, and that's during the game. Look at that right there, huh?
I know. It's
wow. Ugly. Golly, man. Yeah, that is like a preseason game, Rachel. And Well, if you're going to have a preseason game, you might as well play the Cardinals. They're your preseason go-to team every year. That is crazy right there. That's way more. I think I guessed 8,000. Because it was a pretty decent day. 18,000. Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll see what the Walton Penner group does with that. I mean, at least they won. I mean, this would have been even worse had they lost.
True. Some people are asking, DMAC, where are you? DMAC is at Ball Arena. He's getting ready for the Nuggets game tonight. So hopefully they're able to pull out a win too, and it can be a great day for Sunday sports here in Denver. But the Broncos really kind of figured it out because they continuously were running the ball, DMAC, continuously running it. We're seeing Marlon Mack, Latavius Murray really kind of, be an emphasis of this team. And you almost wonder, okay, when they brought in Russ, they were like, oh, we're going to have 75% of our passes be, or our game plan be throws. And now they're like, no, we got to step it back a little and let these two show what they're made of. And honestly, I'm starting to become impressed with Marlon Mack, man. He's proven some stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to run block than to pass block in general. And if you've got a little bit of quit on the other side of the ball, like the defensive line for the Cardinals, you can get some push. And they did. So good for the Broncos offensive line eventually. And once the coaches figured that out, like Rip through that. I mean, listen, they won the game and Rip played fine. But I mean, it's just like you just picked up a big first down, and the next play you throw an interception at the goal line on a first down. It's just like, you got to be kidding me to be that dumb. But whatever. You got a nice play fake and the play action touchdown pass to Tomlinson, and they did fine. They did fine. They did what they should have done against a really poor team. And I'm glad that the fans there were able to see a bunch of scores. And Rachel, maybe next time we'll be there, but we're not. So we're where we are, and that's a good place to be.
Like you said, maybe if we don't go, if we're apart, then they'll actually. Maybe you and I were the curse. But it's kind of this awkward situation, right? Where you're like, oh, they got to win, but they got to win against a very bad team, much like the Broncos. And they're also already eliminated from the playoffs. So this really means nothing unless you want to count it as a win as, hey, maybe we're not going to give Seattle the number 2 pick now, and maybe it's going to be the number 3 pick. Like it's kind of hard to be super excited and walk away. But also you're like, hey, wins don't obviously come all the time, so I might as well enjoy it while it happens. Because it was fun to watch this offense finally get in the end zone and finally get rolling a little bit.
Yeah, it was like a really good preseason game. There was a preseason crowd. There was a preseason vibe. And it was a really solid preseason game in December by the Denver Broncos. I think Nathaniel Hackett is on precarious ground, to say the least. So you got to pick up the wins where you can. And next week on Christmas Day, I mean, eventually you'd have to win some sort of road game. And the Rams are theoretically a disaster, although they seem to have a lot of energy with Baker Mayfield. We'll see how they do a little bit later on. So I think the Broncos should feel pretty good about this, top to bottom. They made a decision not to play Russell Wilson, which was the right decision.
Yes.
You get into some – now you get into some weird –
7 times?
Well, you get into some weird territory now, Rachel. Like, why play Russell Wilson at all? I mean, what's the point the rest of the season? So I really don't know. I have no idea why you would play Russell Wilson the rest of the season. Got me. I mean, they're not going to play Draymond Jones. They put him on the injured reserve list. They welcome back Randy Gregory, and, he had a fine game, but there was no reason to play him either, aside from the fact he's missed 2.5 months. So I don't know. I mean, I guess what you do, Rachel, is that you're fighting desperately if you're a coach to prove, hey, it took us a long time, but look at us now. Now we got it clicking. And that game against the Rams is kind of like, whatever. But you've got a game against the Chiefs and a game against the Chargers to finish off the season. Those are 2 division opponents. You're 0-4 so far in the division. So if you can use this to amp up to some more meaningful, perhaps, tests, that'll be something. And the Chiefs were fighting for their lives today. They got the win eventually, but that wasn't easy for them. The Broncos have lost 14 times in a row to the Chiefs. I don't know. I think you can find some motivation there. And I'm sure they'll practice and play as hard as they can. And you've got to prove that you can beat the Chargers as well. So there's probably plenty to play for the guys and the coaches that are out there. I just don't know if you really need Russell Wilson for any of this. And I'm not, I don't think Brett Rippon is some sort of incredible quarterback. Likely they move on from him next year too. But at least you saw them win a game they should win after looking like crap in the first half. That first half offensively was miserable.
We had some comments at our halftime chill being like, I remember when we would score 9 points or 10 points because they only had 3. And I was like, this game literally could end like 9-6 and like be just another horrible game. But they did figure it out. And is this the first time, D-Mac? I was trying to think back. Is this the first time that we've seen true second half adjustments out of this team? Like the complete just almost change of pace, right? Like there's been a few times where I'm like, yeah, they like sort of figured it out, but they still stuck to their game plan. And it seemed like this time it was kind of like almost a 180 where they were really just, they went on the fly and they said, we're just going to make the adjustments that need to be made.
Well, I'm laughing because what was their choice, Rachel? They gave up 6 sacks in the first half. They were on pace to give up 12 sacks. And they only gave up 1 in the second. I mean, that was unbelievable. So I guess I give them credit because they went in there and said, hey, should we let Brett get killed? No, let's not let Brett get killed. Well, what about letting Brett get killed? So, yes, Rachel, they decided to not let Brett get killed. That was the big adjustment. And so they hitched their wagon to not killing Brett. This organization, go back to Brett Rippon's first start against the Jets when they tried to have him throw the ball out of bounds twice in a row. And he got killed the first time and he got killed the second time. I mean, I don't know how Brett Rippon's going to feel after this game, but not good. Not great, Bob, is my guess. And yes, that's their big adjustment. Not killing Brett Rippon. So good for them. I'm sure Mr. and Mrs. Rippon appreciate it.
True. Yeah, you guys. I mean, this is still really, really ugly, right? Like, there's not a whole lot going on here. The penalties have gone down for the Broncos, so that you can count that as a win, I guess. But I mean, it was 2 bad teams that were playing each other, but it felt like a win for the Broncos. I mean, it was a win for the Broncos, but it felt like more of a win because they were playing a bad team. So I just don't know. I want to be happy. I understand the realities of this all. My biggest question, this is actually going to be a little off topic, is did you see the dog that was at the game?
The dog?
They showed on TV. They showed a French bulldog, I'm pretty sure, or a little Frenchie that Miles took out of the stands and was
yeah. Yes.
How did the dog get in there? That's my big question. That was my first half big question I walked away from, and I was like, how did they get the dog? Because it didn't look like a service dog. Maybe it definitely could have been, but it didn't look like a service dog. So then I was like, how did they get a dog in here? And this is my whole rant of this is we're happy to get a win, but it doesn't mean anything. So at the end of the day, we're still talking about finding a new head coach. Do we fire the GM? You're stuck with Russ, or hashtag stuck with Russ, as you've been saying, D-Mac. So it's like, I just don't know. Yeah, see, how did this dog get in? This is my big question of the day.
That's great. Rachel, that's on the field. So that's got to be, and it's during the game, obviously. Yeah. So it's got to be like a, somebody who hangs out inside of the tunnel. I guess theoretically.
No, he pulled it out of the stands, D-Mac. He pulled it from a fan. I'm mind blown by this.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. I watched him pull it from the stands.
Rachel, it's a mystery of the universe. I did that dog count as a seat filler? Kind of like the Oscars when somebody goes to the bathroom and they don't want to look bad on TV and they have actors who are 20-something waiters fill the seats. We're using dogs as seat fillers today?
I don't know. It just caught me by surprise. I've been thinking about it ever since. The entire game, we could probably be really honest, and I know that people in the comments will agree. It was rather a boring game. There was bursts of excitement, but otherwise you were kind of paying attention to doing other things. Maybe you were cooking lunch, getting ready for dinner, whatever it is. It was overall a pretty boring game to watch with a few spurts, like I say. But that just stuck in my head the whole time of where the heck did we get the dog? And that and Nathaniel Hackett getting mad because Brandon McManus missed a 38-yard field goal. And I'm like, Brandon McManus, I think it's time for you to exit the Mile High City, my friend. I think you've had your dues. You paid them, but you're struggling now. We've seen cats on the field, so Okay. Well, maybe I'm just missing out on the animals. I don't know. I know DMAC, we've seen lots of people run down on the fields too. So maybe it's just a while. It's like a zoo out there nowadays. I don't know.
I will let people know this is inside stadium stuff. Often stadiums do allow feral cats to live in the stadiums because they chase around the mice and other rodents. So it's very, very common in stadiums to cats just live there because they leave some food or some drink, milk or whatever for cats. That actually exists in Coors Field. There are Coors Field cats. And, during games in general, they're scared. They kind of go wherever, and then they just hunt after mice. And that's why every now and then you do see a cat on the field. That is a true story. I do not know if that is the case down there at Empower Field with dogs. That would not seem to make sense.
It's taking such a turn on our post-game live. I'm sorry, everybody. We're just talking there's just so much with this team. It's so interesting. The foxes running around Coors Field. I have not seen that, but
just happened. That was just there. Listen, there are foxes in neighborhoods, and they could get into the field. That just happened the other day. It was crazy. There were a couple of foxes out on Coors Field, and I'm not talking about some.
All right, moving on. The silver foxes. Is that what you said, T-Mac? Okay, let's get back to some football, though. This offensive line, I'm starting to feel a little bit bad for them, and I know people are always like, oh, they're millionaires, they make a lot of money. These players are having to just go in at random positions that they may never have played or practiced only a few times because the injuries just keep piling on and piling on. I'm starting to feel a little bit bad for him, DMAC. I mean, who knows? You might be left guard one day, center the next with how many injuries they have.
Today was really weird because Quinn Bailey and Netani Muti, the two guards that filled in for Wattenberg, are gone. So Moody got signed by the Raiders, and they didn't activate Quinn Bailey. And so sure enough, you lose Miners early, and then you lose Dalton Reisner. Listen, Reisner was dealing with a shoulder thing that was clearly still bothering him, and he just tried to suck it up and play. Dalton's I think he's trying to prove something. I think he's trying to earn his next contract. I think his shoulder injury is actually, pretty serious. So that may have been the last time we see Dalton Reisner play for the Broncos. I certainly hope not. We'll see how it pans out. I hope Dalton's back next year, and I hope he's back next week. But I have concerns that he did miss a game because of that, and then he had to leave it. The way he was holding his arm, that to me feels like it's some sort of shoulder thing as well. So we'll see with Dalton. Graham Glasgow, his best days are past him, and he's playing center. You did get Billy Turner back, and you were able to use Cam Fleming out of the other tackle. But, overall, Rachel, it quickly became a mess. And J.J. Watt in particular was he was owning the Broncos, absolutely owning them. So they got away from it. They did figure it out. Rachel, I guess to their credit, although, again, I go back to the should we let Brett get killed or not sort of adjustments at halftime. And essentially they wanted him to continue to live a life. So I don't think it was all that complicated, but it worked to their credit. And they were able to run block much better. And you were going against a team that the game meant nothing to. Listen, the Cardinals are just not a great defense. They're not. The performance they got out of J.J. Watt today was bizarre next level. But they've given up incredible days to a variety of pass rushers this entire season. There have been career years made off of the Broncos offensive line. And again, Rachel, this goes to the argument. If you're making a keep Hackett argument, this is how you would do it. You would say there's been a lot of injuries and we're making it work. You've had 2 games in a row where they've scored some points. All right. Not incredible, but way better than the whole season. So now you've seen consecutive games where they put some points up, they have made adjustments, and they still are surviving a ton of injuries. The keep Hackett movement is gaining a little bit of momentum right now.
Okay, so I say this, not that I'm jumping on the keep Hackett train. I want to make that very clear. But do you think that these players are starting to figure out this offense that they planned at the beginning of the year?
I think things, it's like a weird combination of Things are clicking probably a little bit better. They're sort of figuring out who they are. They're not making game management mistakes. The problem, Rachel, is if you just go with a Frank Reich or Dan Quinn, you're throwing away everything that you've sort of amassed in this year. And of course, there'll be turnover with the players. But the NFL, according to Adam Schefter, just put out an announcement to all these teams. Like we have spent as a league $800 million in the past few years on blown out coaches and assistants. And they're searching their entire league for more consistency. I'm not exactly sure why they're doing it, but my guess is there's got to be something that the brand of the NFL would be better overall if they were just a little bit more consistent and not quite so quick to blow out all sorts of coaches. Now, I want to move on from Peyton, Hackett, and Wilson. But in lieu of that, the last thing I want to do is put in another coach, keep Peyton and keep Wilson. And then once you get that next coach in there, Rachel, that's 3 years. I'm telling you, it'll be just like the Vic Fangio situation, because you're not going to go back to back to back in terms of blowing out coaches. You're just not. And so that regime, whatever it is, Rachel, there's no guarantee they're going to make things work with Russell Wilson better. In fact, I'd say you just go down with the ship, all three of them together, or it clicks and you give yourself some hope. The Russell Wilson is the biggest issue, okay? He's the biggest issue. I won't say problem, but I'll say issue. So either you can figure that out and you make it work, or sink to the bottom of the sea. And then you can just really, truly restart from scraps. But thinking that like Dan Quinn or Frank Reich is going to come in here and get you 8 wins, 9 wins? You have just as good a shot as doing that with Nathaniel Hackett and a healthier lineup. You do. So, and I'm not even trying to, again, I say all this, and I have been saying this. You understand I'm saying this, but I would remove Peyton, Hackett, and Wilson tomorrow. I
know, and the more you talk about it, which is really frustrating, the more it makes sense. So I'm like, it's like being torn between your heart and your head, right? You're like, oh my gosh, like I don't want this, but when you talk about it that way, it makes sense. Zach By saying the Broncos just stacked a win versus third string QB on top of a moral victory last week. Does this mean Hackett is now back for next season? We'll discuss it next. Oh gosh, yeah. That's so funny. But I do want to give you some updates around the AFC West. Jake Shapiro on our back end does a wonderful job of making sure everybody stays up to date. But the Chargers just had a game-winning field goal against the Titans. Okay. And then the Patriots just lost to the Raiders. My New England's last play, they pitching the ball back, lost it to the Raiders, who run it back for a touchdown with no time left.
Wow. Were they in field goal range or not?
I do not know. Jake's gonna have to answer that in the back end. Just outside, he said, a field goal range. And then I saw too that Tom Brady, I mean, he's a whole mess. He's kind of been a disaster too. So interesting what's going on in the AFC West. Obviously, the Chiefs too. We talked about it a little bit. We touched on it. They went into overtime with Houston. That was crazy. And then they ended up winning and they clinched the AFC West too. So interesting day. But does this football season, DMAC, just feel like so many crazy things are happening all the time? Like I never expected Tom Brady to be experiencing the season he is. I never expected the Broncos to be where they are right now. I didn't when you're talking about it week to week, did you ever really think that Houston would take the the Chiefs into overtime and stop Patrick Mahomes and end up losing based on a interception? There's just so many different things that I'm like, what is going on in the NFL? I'm here for it. Don't get me wrong. I love it. It makes it so entertaining, but it's just there's no consistency. It feels like every week I'm like, holy smokes, what's going on?
Well, that's what makes it entertaining and exciting. And that's what you saw last night with the Bills and the Dolphins as well. What a comeback by the Vikings, obviously. I mean, this is what makes the NFL fantastic. And it does suck that, Rachel, it's another year of us on the outside looking in on all the excitement of it. So it's odd. There's only a handful of teams that are eliminated from the playoffs. The Broncos were eliminated last week.
Yep.
So you look for things to build on. Now, I know what Zach was talking about. Are people going to, See, I think it's just important to realize, well, I'm saying keep Hackett next year because I just seriously do not believe it's going to be any better. And, in fact, I think it could actually be worse because I think it would be harder to remove a bad situation after a bad 2023 if you bring in another guy. So that other guy better be the man, or seriously, we're just going to have another, Vic Fangio sort of situation. And I'm down on George Payton too, really down on him. I think he's made one bad move after another. So I think it's interesting, Rachel. I think Greg Penner may get this too. I am not going to be upset with Greg Penner if they don't fire Hackett. I will understand it. I see what the NFL is doing, warning these teams about replacing all these guys. So I think that's being suggested. Do not forget, Damani Leach, the president of the Broncos, worked for the NFL last year. So he has close connections. So he probably does understand how ridiculous it is just to blow guys out left and right. And if that's coming from the NFL, my guess is Damani Leach is part of that examination as well. Now, they will replace assistant coaches, Rachel, no doubt about it. And Butch Barry, the offensive line coach, that guy is as good as gone. I mean, what a disaster the offensive line has been. But don't think that just in case Hackett's not fired, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Walton Penner group is in love with them. They may be thinking like I'm thinking. Like, we can go with this three-headed monster, Peyton, Hackett, Wilson, for another year, and it does work, or we're in a better situation finally with a first-round draft pick to pick our quarterback of tomorrow, that sort of thing. So I just want people to be careful out there to understand keeping Hackett is not a full endorsement that they think he's great. It may be just easier to reconstruct the entire organization after the 2023 year rather than after the 2022 year. Okay? So just a heads up. It's a weird endorsement and a weird reason to keep Hackett. That's for sure.
Well, you're not the only one who's starting to think that they may be keeping Nathaniel Hackett. Our very own James Marilot also does it. And we saw the head coach. He was very happy on the sidelines, James, but how was he in the press conference?
Relatively subdued. Honestly, he was more jovial last week than he was this week. He said all the right things. He praised praised the team for the way they, stayed together even when they were down 9-3. And they put together the 21 unanswered points there. So praised the assistant coaches for the adjustments at halftime, particularly in how they were going to stop that pass rush, because the Cardinals were all over them in the first half, and J.J. Watt was in the backfield the entire first half. So he was giving credit to other people. The big takeaway, Russell Wilson is starting Christmas Day against the Rams. Nathaniel Hackett let us know that today.
Not shocked.
But guys, okay, listen. I got to jump in on the NFL report about $800 million over the last 5 years. I get it. That sounds like a big number. I understand that. You divide it by 32, it's $25 million per team. That's $5 million a year. They spent twice that much this year on Ronald Darby. I mean, what are we talking about here? These teams waste $5 million on paper clips and copy paper. It's clearly that was planted by somebody who is trying to justify keeping a coach that everybody wants to get fired. Adam Schefter, where's he connected to? Denver. That was clearly a plant trying to let everybody know, hey, we got to be financially prudent here. $800 million is a lot. Not when you divide it by 32 and divide it by 5. It's not. It's a joke. Talk about a terrible justification for keeping a head coach that is so in over his head. But they won today. They beat McSorley. Okay, let's throw a parade. And they'll probably get a win on Christmas Day. And we're going to see this nonsense again next year. And then we'll all be shocked when we're talking in December about games that don't mean anything. Oh, my gosh. That story was such a ridiculous plant and just makes no sense. No sense at all.
I'm sorry. You got to walk me down that conspiracy theory. Who from the Broncos do you think planted that?
I'm just saying.
You just said D-Mac. Damani Leach is connected.
Somebody leaked that story.
Planted that story?
Somebody leaked it to Adam Schefter. He wasn't there. He didn't see the presentation, so somebody told it to him. So why do you want that story out? Well, if you're a team that's thinking about keeping a head coach that everybody wants gone, you want that story out there so the narrative becomes, hey, teams are too quick to pull the trigger. They're wasting so much money. $5 million a year to the Broncos wouldn't impact them from doing anything. And that's back when the trust was running it. Now that the Walton Penner family ownership group is running it, $5 million a year? I mean, they spend that on coffee. Come on. What are we doing here?
I love James' conspiracy theory on this. That is a lot of dots to connect, but okay. And again, the reason James and I have a disagreement on this is James still sees hope with Russell Wilson, and I don't. So if you still have hope with Russell, you're probably dying to replace Nathaniel Hackett. But don't forget, I don't believe in Russell Wilson, and I don't believe in George Payton. I don't believe in either of those guys.
But here's the thing, D-Mac. And you know, anytime somebody thinks outside the box and goes against the grain, they're conspiracy theorists. I got it. But here's the thing. You guys, when I was waiting in the green room here, we're talking about keeping Nathaniel Hackett. He's the head coach of a 4-10 football team that won on U.S. soil for the first time since September. We're talking about keeping him. And you cited that story. Mission accomplished from whoever planted it. From whoever planted it, mission accomplished, because it's being used to justify bringing back a guy who has been a complete embarrassment for 3 months, and they're going to talk themselves into bringing him back. They are. It's remarkable to me.
Is it just George Payton saving his butt? Because if they have to fire Hackett, I mean, you look at George Payton and you're like, bro, what are we even doing here? And yes, I use the term bro and be like, we're sitting down being like, what on earth is going on? So is it just George Payton saying, hey, I need to save my own butt? We got to keep Nathaniel Hackett. Otherwise, things aren't looking good for me.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it, you know, a lot of, I don't know how you let George Payton hire another coach after he missed so badly 12 months ago. So, yeah, but we can all already hear the story. You know, teams pull the plug too early. Look at all the money they spend on coaches they fired. Okay, a lot of close losses. Look at these injuries. We started to see that this week already, right? When Draymond went on IR, all the mouthpieces started telling us the Broncos' woes as though, you know, they weren't relatively healthy at the beginning of the year when they couldn't score more than 9 points against the Colts. But, okay, the newness factor. It writes itself. It writes itself. I mean, I can put together the bullet points. Patrick, give me a call. I'll put together the bullet points for you. It'll be fine.
This is so funny because ultimately James and I are kind of on the same page on the vast majority of these things. However, if they keep Hackett, I will be excited because I will know that they couldn't get Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton. I'll know that because if they could, they would. I'll know that, and I'll know they avoided getting a 3-year coach automatically. So to me, this is the best news to get rid of Payton, Wilson, and Hackett at the end of 2023. Again, you wouldn't even be in this situation if you didn't give this ridiculous contract to Russell Wilson and you didn't get fleeced in this trade. If that wasn't the case, and say they didn't give the deal to Russell Wilson, let's imagine that for a second. They didn't give him the deal. Then, James, I would be right on board with you. In fact, I would be talking about today, what can we do to draft or develop a new quarterback? This is all because of that contract. If it wasn't for that contract, we'd be having a completely different conversation.
Okay, and I get where you're coming from, and to some extent, I won't be excited. That's not the word I'll use. But I will like the fact that it's going to be 2023 is make or break for all three of them. No more excuses after that.
Well, okay. That's good.
I can buy into that. I won't be excited. But here's how ridiculous that Adam Schefter stat is. $800 million. Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson. Those three contracts alone are $800 million. I mean, what are we talking about here? $800 million divided by 32 teams divided by 5 years. They spend that much on their bar tabs at league meetings. It's ridiculous. It's insanity that we're talking about. This is like they should keep a bad coach because of that stat. Oh,
we're going to have Adam Schefter on the show tomorrow afternoon. What should I ask him?
Who leaked it to him? That's what I want to know.
Help me out. He's not going to tell you that. But besides, reveal your sources reporter, which you know is never going to happen.
No.
What's the other question to ask him about that?
Why does the league want this narrative out there now?
There you go. That's the real question.
Why make it seem like it's such a big number, right? When you break it down like James does, it's really not that big of a number.
There's got to be a reason it hurts the brand of the NFL. It's got to be the reason why that has come out. And I don't know exactly what it is because, James, actually, you're right. So what with the money? It's really not that big of a deal. Not really. So I'm not sure. Now, your conspiracy theory is interesting that it's a team that is about to try to justify keeping a coach they should be fired. I'm trying to figure out why that comes from the Broncos to Adam Schefter. Like, because I think if I'm George Payton, I'd want to fire Hackett. Like, it saves my hide for sure if I just dump Hackett and hire a new guy. And they're going to give George Payton, again, Adam had that story too about George Payton, didn't he? So Adam's getting something from the Broncos. See, I'm helping you conspiracy theory here, James, a little bit.
Well, and here's the other thing.
You might be right about Damani Leach. Damani Leach may be that guy.
$800 million is a huge number, and it's sticker shock for everybody, right? That's why it comes out that way, because when you do the math, it's not that big a deal. But then you also have to ask the question of, like, okay, well, what team has been hamstrung by that? NFL teams print money. They really do. With their TV contracts, they print money. They only have to spend 50% of it, of all of their revenue on players. That's their biggest expense. Like, they have money to burn. It hasn't hamstrung a single team from going out and doing something they need to do because, we're still paying. We paid Vic Fangio this year for that 4th year, so what can we possibly do? So it's a nonsensical story. So, yeah, why are they putting it out there?
We'll ask Adam tomorrow.
Who wants it out there?
And I love how Nathaniel Hackett is still walking on eggshells after a win. Like, he doesn't want to be too happy because he knows you just won without Russell Wilson. I cannot believe in the press conference he felt the need to announce Russell Wilson was going to start next Sunday.
You know what they did? We did fine today. And look, Brett Rippon played fine. He didn't play great, but he played fine. Mm-hmm. We found out today if they actually run an offense that isn't based on trying to pad their quarterback stats and run the darn football, they can be effective. Latavius Murray looked really, really good today. They just get away from that because it's what does Russ want to do? No, we have to have a head coach. We have to have a guy in charge that's like, this is what we're going to do because it's for the best of the team. We did learn that today. I thought that was good. And by the way, guys, while you were on, you missed potentially the dumbest loss an NFL team has ever taken.
Are you talking the Patriots?
The Patriots. Oh, my.
Recap it.
Please.
All right, so it's 24-24. Last play of the game. They throw a little screen pass. I think it was to Stevenson. The Patriots have the ball. He weaves his way down. He crosses midfield. He gets to like the 30, but the clock is expired. So if he goes down, it's game over. We're going to overtime. He throws a lateral to a receiver who then tries to lateral it all the way across the field to Mac Jones. Chandler Jones picks it off, stiff arms Mac Jones, and runs for the game-winning touchdown. It was over. It was overtime.
They were doing the desperation backward lateral thing in a tie game?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
Bill Belichick said this.
It's like his head was going to explode.
So wait, they do nothing and they go to overtime.
Correct.
And they were doing the backward lateral thing.
Yeah. Like they were down 6 and they had to score. It was amazing.
That is the dumbest thing of all time. And it was intercepted in the air?
Yeah. Chandler Jones picks it off, stiff arms Mac Jones, and runs 50 yards for the game-winning touchdown. It was wacky. It was like something you'd see in like a high school game or an 8th grade game and be like, what on earth are we doing here? Because they don't have rules are quirky or something. It was nuts.
Remarkable.
Yeah, I was talking to D-Mac earlier about this. This year in the NFL, it feels like you just truthfully never know what you're going to get. It's amazing. It's fun. It's why I know we all love the sport. So, wow. And you know what? The Broncos get the win today. Let it rip a little bit, even though I guess Russ is going to start cooking again next week. So we'll see. But that'll do it for D-Mac, James, myself, Rachel B. Hill.
Wait, do you want to see the Nuggets for a second?
Absolutely. You want to take us on
some excitement because we're not at an Empower Field, right? So
we are at Ball Arena. D-Mac's going to the Nuggets game tonight.
I just want to let people know, like, the Nuggets had no problems with us being here, and we're excited for the game tonight. So I just want to.
I saw Aaron Gordon walk in his fancy outfit. He looked pretty good. Hopefully his internet will reconnect.
Just show everybody. It's all right. And there we go, guys.
I can't hear you, but we're getting ready for the Nuggets and the Hornets. There we are, inside the Ball Arena, not at Empower Field. There you go.
Let's go Nuggets. All for the win tonight. They're definitely closer to the postseason than the Broncos are, so we'll roll with it. Hopefully them and the Avs can keep the winning streak alive. But D-Mac, James Merrill, Rachel V. Hill, all hanging out with you. Thank you so much. D-Mac and I will be back tomorrow morning on Coffee Break, 10:30 a.m. Come hang out with us. Bye, everybody.
Oh, sorry about that.